Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family. Today on Sue's Healthy Minutes, we are going to continue our discussion about wheat and farming with my guest, Andre Giles. If you missed it last week, I encourage you to go back, listen to that episode. Andre Giles is not only a wheat farmer, but he owns and operates a grain cleaning facility and elevator in Fort Benton, Montana. He's the sole U.S. agent for Kamut brand grain, which everyone I know loves. And so Andre is an expert. I think he's my expert anyway in the field of wheat and wheat production and wheat farming. So Andre, thank you again for joining me this week. We so appreciated all your insight and information that you shared with us last week. I'm just going to fire away with some of the most frequently asked questions that we get. My customer service and office personnel, they said, please get Andre on to answer some of these questions. So one by one, just going to fire away. We may have answered a few of them last episode, but it won't hurt to mention them again. So first and foremost, thank you. Welcome, Andre.
You bet. Glad to be back, Sue.
Yes. Glad to have you. First, is the wheat available to U.S. consumers genetically modified?
No, not in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. What does it mean to be certified organic?
So the 1990 Farm Bill took a definition for organic and said that USDA needed to come up with a national standard. Up to that point, it had been a state standard or private organizations. And so they made it a legal term. And by 96 or 7, there's a set of standards that means this is what certified organic means. And there's prohibited substances that can't be used in livestock or crop production. In the crop side of things, those are synthetic fertilizers and chemical herbicides, and pesticides are, most pesticides are out. There's some natural pesticides that are allowed. So it's about the practices used to produce food.
Okay. And so you get this certification from the government, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. The government certifies the certifiers.
Yeah.
And so you can go to USDA NOP, that stands for National Organic Program, and you can look at their database and you can see all the different certifiers. And then underneath those certifiers, you can see all the different operations that they certify. If they're certifying an operation, either a handler or a farmer, it's public record. You cannot be certified and have it be private. It's all public.
That's good to know. Now, you deal with both organic and we call it non-organic wheat. I think you call it commercial wheat.
Yeah.
So we've already talked about the major differences is the commercial wheats, they can use some chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I've always told customers, I feel pretty confident with the farming methods used there in Montana. And you might want to address anything there, the major differences in the wheat.
Well, it is a little bit philosophical. I would say that the organic farmer treats the soil more as a living entity, not a natural resource. But the conventional farmers in Montana, the commercial farmers, they are very careful. They are passionate about what they do. They are certainly not getting rich fast by putting one over on anyone. And weeds are a big, huge issue in both systems. And so a lot of the difference is how you tackle weeds.
Yeah. In organic, are there chemicals that can be used for weed control? I mean, because you're right. We grow a garden and we have a flower garden. We used to have a big vegetable garden, and weeds were always an issue. So in organic farming, are there chemicals that might be used on the fields to help control the weed situation?
In row cropping or in like berry production or things, I can't speak to those. I've heard there are some. One of the things that can be used effectively, if you want to call it a chemical or not, is open to definition, but high concentrate vinegar, like 30 to 50% vinegar, is an extremely effective weed killer. There's also propane torches that can kill weeds extremely. That's not a chemical, but in a small plot berry farm, neither of those methods are remotely feasible in Montana. What we are in is a desert where if a farmer in Georgia doesn't cut 100 bushel of wheat a year, they're extremely disappointed. Most farmers in Montana, conventional farmers, will get 60 to 70 bushel of winter wheat and 35 bushel of spring wheat and be very happy and organic because they don't use synthetic fertilizers. Are going to be less than that. They grow their fertilizer and plow it under. They'll plant a legume like a pea or a clover, sometimes alfalfa, and then terminate that in 1 year or in 3 years, and they're growing their own fertilizer. That takes a lot of moisture, so it's hard to do. Where if you look at a drought map right now, the whole western U.S. is in pretty rough shape.
Yeah, we've been praying for you because we want a good wheat crop. So that what you mentioned is they'll plant what's called a cover crop, right? And that puts nutrients back in the soil. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
I know that every now and then we'll see a little stray seed, especially in our organic grains, and people will call and they'll get concerned about the little black round seed, sometimes a long thin one. It almost looks like rye. What's used commonly as cover crops?
Peas are a very common cover crop.
Yeah, because they put nitrogen back in the soil. Right?
Exactly. Clover is a legume. It'll do that. Clover's a little black seed.
Oh, is that what that is? Probably the little round seeds?
Often, occasionally, it might be a pigweed seed if it's a little bit bigger. The long, narrow black one is wild oat. As in sowing your wild oats. It's It's very difficult. That's a tough weed, and sometimes it's so close to the shape and size of wheat that it's hard to get out every single one of those. And I think that's one of the things that our urban society, divorced from where their food is produced, expects perfection.
Yes.
And these agricultural products, they're
grown outside.
Exactly. There's not a quality control department standing in the field with checking every head of wheat, Yeah,
I know. So we've been to your facility and we tell people we watched the cleaning operation. Wheat can't be washed. So people are like, how is it cleaned? Can you explain that a little bit? I've seen it, taken it through different screens, right?
Yeah. So let's speak to your first point. Using water in the cleaning process is completely infeasible.
Right.
At the end of the process, in the making of white flour, water is added to the bran, which I'm sure you've told your listeners endlessly about, and strip the bran off. But when it comes in from the field, wheat has weed seeds in it. It's going to have chaff from the heads. It's a dusty process because knocking those heads out from where they're held so tightly in their awns creates chaff. And then you're going to have things like grasshopper heads that are, they're out in the field. So when the wheat's harvested, there's grasshoppers in there. No matter how careful we try and harvest, there's usually rocks or mud balls a little bit in almost every lot of wheat that has to be gotten out. So we use size. We use mechanical means to clean those, not anything to do with water,
Right.
which would damage the thing. So we use density, we use size, and we use color in different ways and different machines to get those impurities out.
Yeah. I've seen them. They're screens, and the screens get smaller and smaller in size as you pass through different stages of the cleaning, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Some stages of the cleaning, you're trying to get little bad things out of bigger good things, and then you reverse the process in other steps, and then you use things like gravity tables and destoners to use density to separate things that size has a hard time doing.
I know that you work with a lot of family-owned farms, and I think we talked about this, but small is in wheat farming is a relative term. I know I spoke in Texas, and the family I stayed with that hosted me, he was a wheat farmer, and I said, "Well, so how big is your farm?" He said 30,000 acres. I'm like, "Well, that's sizable, yeah." So we're not talking about an acre or two here or there to grow wheat, right?
No, we are not. And a person growing wheat in central Pennsylvania with the amount of rain they get versus the dry, arid plains of Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, that's a totally different environment.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that you work with some of your farmers. I know that you know some of them personally, but have you developed a relationship with the farmers that bring grain into your facility over the years? Do you ever go and tour their farms to check them out? I guess I'm trying to ask, do you have a vetting process before you accept grain from a certain farm?
Absolutely. Sure we do. We have both a formal process because we have a certification under the Global Food Safety Initiative. We participate with a certifier called SQF, Safe Quality Foods. And they have a formal paperwork process, but I am now buying in a few cases from nephews or grandsons of people that I started out with when I started here in the early 90s.
Wow, that's amazing.
And not all farms have been that lucky to be passed down, but yes, we do have a vetting process, formal and informal.
Yeah. All right. What kind of wheat is grown predominantly in Montana? Winter or spring or some of both? What's the difference?
There's definitely some of both. The predominant wheat would be hard red winter wheat. That has to go through what's called a process of vernalization, which means it will not flower. If it doesn't flower, it won't set kernels. But in order to flower, it has to go through vernalization, and that's where the plant's biology says it has to be cold for a certain length of time. And so it's planted in the fall, it grows, then it goes into dormancy, and then another way to say this is if you planted winter wheat in the spring, it would just be like lawn grass and it would never shoot ahead because it didn't get cold enough for long enough. That's what vernalization is.
Okay.
What winter wheat does is it helps farmers capture more of the rainfall, since that's our biggest limiting resource in Kansas, western Kansas, in West Texas, all the way up to Montana, Alberta, Saskatchewan. We have a lot of acreage, but our limiting factor is we have fairly low rainfall. Yeah. And winter wheat helps it capture more of the rain. In general, winter wheat will be a lower quality of protein for bread baking than will spring wheats.
Okay. So winter wheat is planted in the fall, and it's actually the variety. So it's not like it's the only difference is not just the planting season. It's actually the variety of wheat. So it needs that cold time period. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. If you were to plant a spring wheat like Durham, which our pasta is made from, or hard red spring, or hard white spring, or soft white spring in the fall, they'd come up. Yeah. But when the frost hit them hard, they'd just die. They have no ability to then.
Okay. I didn't understand that. Huh. So you also grow spring wheat. So that's going to be planted when?
April and May, typically.
So your winter wheat is harvested in the spring, and then your spring wheat is harvested more towards the end of summer and fall?
The winter wheat is typically harvested in July and early August.
Oh, okay. In the summer.
And then the spring wheat is generally, 30, sometimes 15 to 45 days behind that, depending on when you planted it. And there's a lot of different kinds of spring wheat, as there is also different kinds of winter. We grow hard red winter in this part of the world, but in your part of the world, they go soft red winter.
Exactly. Yes.
In Washington State, for Japanese noodles and other applications like crackers and things, they grow soft white winter wheat. And then there's durum wheat for pasta that's very hard, and that's a spring wheat. Then there's hard white spring, there's hard white winter wheat.
And those usually have a higher protein. Your spring wheats typically have a higher protein content because
Yes.
less rainfall.
That's right. They get more. What causes the plant to put protein into that head is a combination of fertilizer and stress. Or said another way, nutrient availability, whether it's from fertilizer put on or grown, and then stress to the plant.
Yeah, that's what I tell everybody. The argument, that the modern wheat that we have today has been, well, a lot of people say genetically modified, which we know that's not correct, but even bred so that it has higher protein content. But I explain it that the protein content in the grain is more determined by rainfall during the growing season. And like you said, stress to the plant itself, right?
Yes. The plant breeding techniques, which are not GMO, that have been used since the end of World War II, basically, have a lot more to do with yield and disease and pest resistance than they do protein.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the plant breeding in this country, wheat plant breeding is wheat to wheat. You're not crossing it with other things, your other crops or whatever you want to call it, or certainly not animals or anything like that, because that's genetic modification. But it's crossbred, wheat to wheat.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I tell people, like, even if I took a spring wheat seed, like I can take our wheat here that we get from you, I can plant it here. In fact, I have it sprouted sometimes in my flower garden where I spill some, but it would, because of our rainy growing season and our warm weather, even though that's hard wheat seed, it's not going to produce hard wheat here, correct?
The wheat will be hard, but it probably will never get stressed enough to give you a high protein.
Okay.
And it also has no fungal leaf disease resistance, where you're so much more humid. There's a host of diseases that come with that kind of humidity for a wheat from our environment, that it would get diseased, which will affect the plant and the actual wheat.
Well, that's a good segue into my next question. A question I get asked all the time is about wheat's susceptibility to mold or mycotoxins. Some people are even being told to stay away from wheat, especially if they're dealing with mold issues. Can you explain this and where the grain is sourced, or say Montana winters make such a difference in reducing this susceptibility?
Yeah, so maybe a good way to think about that is that a lot of corn is harvested at moisture, 18% moisture and up, say. And a corn farmer might tell me, no, it's harvested at 17% moisture. I don't know the exact moisture, but then it's dried in drying bins throughout the Midwest. That's very common. The wheat in Montana, we hardly have any propane natural gas drying bins. It dries in the field and gets dried down to less than 14% moisture, usually around less than 12 even. And that has, because we seldom get rain during harvest time, that takes a lot of those mycotoxin and mold concerns and just takes them away.
Yeah.
Our winters do. So there's field-borne diseases, and then there's storage things that happen in storage. And one of our great advantages is something we call 20 below Fahrenheit.
Yes, you explained that to me.
And on a cold winter's day, most farmers have bins. We have them here at our place with fans on them, and you take and you suck in 20 below air and you blow it up through that bin, which kills pests and helps it to store for a long time.
Without the danger. Yeah. So you've already got dry wheat, and then you have very dry, cold storing facilities.
Yeah. Yes.
So, yeah. So one question, I've seen people show pictures on their social media with some of the wheat having a little black tip, and I think we looked it up, and that's called black point. What causes that, and is it safe to eat grain that's affected by this? Is this some type of mold, or what is this?
Yeah, black tip is a fungus, a mold, and it's fairly common when there's some rain that came while the plant was maturing. It'll typically be in a minority of the kernels, and it'll typically just be on the tip, like you have noticed.
Yeah.
And it's a very small thing that basically a lot of there's 2 or 3 main diseases. There's ergot, which seldom gets in wheat in the northern plains. We're just not wet enough. It can occasionally get in rye and barley. It's also what caused the Salem witch trials. At high enough concentrations, ergot will cause hallucination and all kinds of health problems, and it's bad for livestock. Then there's something called aflatoxin, which is mostly related with corn. It's wheat that's been grown around corn is much more susceptible to aflatoxin because it's mostly a corn country disease. And then there's something called DON, or vomitoxin is its common name. And we test for those levels continuously. And we have a track record in Montana of seldom having problems with these. Now, when we would have to do more intensive testing is if we get a lot of rain at harvest time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I tell our customers, that this wheat's actively being tested. This is something you don't want to get contamination with grains that have these. So you're constantly looking and testing and watching and being observant.
Yes.
To prevent any of this. So anyway, I think that about gets all the questions I had for you. I'll probably think of 10 more after we hang up. But, Brad and I and our son David, we visited your facility and we've seen how the wheat is cleaned. And at Bread Becker's, we package our grain in food grade buckets to protect from moisture. And then we package it with carbon dioxide gas to prevent any bug infestations if there's anything there that we can't see. But I often see people who buy in bags and they recommend freezing the grain. And you mentioned the cold climates there. Is freezing the grain, say if you're buying it in bags, is this effective to kill bugs or bug eggs, those freezing temperatures?
Well, I think you framed that very well, Sue, because I think that it's definitely going to be effective in killing live bugs that are already alive.
Yeah.
They can't stand those temperatures. Its influence on whether eggs in there are going to be dead or whether they're going to be viable and hatch is, I think, much more tenuous and depends on how long you have it in the freezer. And I'm not an entomologist, so I'll just leave it there because we get bugs from time to time after a winter where the guy cooled the grain. But storage pests with your humidity and your heat in your part of the world are a way bigger deal than they are in ours.
Yeah. I know that when we decided to be a grain packaging facility, we were told you can't do it. It's too wet, it's too humid, in the South, you just can't. And we were like, well, we got to. So we start with getting grain, the best grain we possibly can, and then packaging it the way we can. And when that wheat truck comes in, we get it all packaged in those buckets to protect it from the moisture more than anything. So I've said this before. I personally believe some of the best wheat is grown in Montana. I think you would agree with me.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. And we just thank you. Thank you as a wheat farmer and as someone that works alongside our farmers. We just don't say thank you enough to you guys for what you do. We have to eat. And thank you for your commitment to families and end consumers like our customers that for some might be considered the small guys in the food chain. We're certainly not the big pharma people. But Andre, we appreciate you so very much. Thank you again for sharing your knowledge with everyone, answering our many questions. And I pray for rain in the right moment and the right time.
Thank you, Sue. Keep doing that.
Oh, you are welcome. So thank you to everyone listening. Thank you again, Andre, for joining us. Until next time, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.